The stars outside the porthole glittered like frozen sparks, vast and unreachable. David Carter slouched in the pilot's seat, sweat trickling down his brow as he stared at the lifeless control panel. His small freighter, the Eclipse, was adrift, systems fried, engines dead, and no communication signals getting through. This was supposed to be a quick delivery job across the outer rim, but everything went catastrophically wrong. He smacked the console in frustration. "Come on, baby, don't do this to me." Nothing responded. David reached for his toolkit, determined to find the cause of the malfunction. As he worked, something outside the ship caught his eye, an enormous alien vessel looming silently in the void. It was ancient, its structure woven with glowing blue patterns that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. His heart thumped louder. This could be his only shot at survival. Maybe he could scavenge something from the alien ship, anything to bring his systems back online. There wasn't time to hesitate. He suited up, locked his helmet in place, and floated out into the emptiness, tethered only by a fragile line. The alien ship towered over him as he drifted closer. His strange force tugged at the edges of his mind, as if the ship was calling to him. He ignored the unease bubbling in his chest and pressed forward. The airlock on the alien vessel hissed open, as if it had been waiting for him. That was when David realized something wasn't right. But he was already inside. In the dim, eerie corridor, strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft hum of unseen machinery. As David ventured deeper, a flickering light caught his attention, a stasis pod tucked away in a corner of the ship. Curiosity got the better of him. When he wiped the frost from the glass, his breath caught. Inside was a girl, not human, but close enough. Her skin shimmered in shades of lavender, her eyes shut as if trapped in a peaceful dream. She looked delicate, but there was something unsettling about the serenity on her face, like she didn't belong in this cold place. David hesitated. Waking her was a risk, but he needed answers. And more importantly, he needed to know if she could help him escape this graveyard in space. With a deep breath, he activated the pod's release mechanism. The glass slid open with a low hiss, releasing a cloud of cold vapor. The girl stirred, her silver hair flowing like liquid mercury as her violet eyes snapped open. Before David could speak, her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist in a grip far stronger than he'd expected. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice smooth but edged with suspicion. David swallowed hard, raising his free hand slowly. "I'm David, and, well, I think we're both trapped here." The girl's gaze softened slightly, though she didn't release her grip. "I'm Kira," she said, her voice laced with uncertainty. "And I think something very bad is about to happen." Low rumble vibrated through the alien ship, sending shivers down David's spine. Kira's eyes widened with alarm. "They're coming," she whispered. David's heart raced. "Who?" Kira met his gaze with a seriousness that left no room for doubt. "The ones who never stop hunting." David's pulse quickened as the ship shuddered again, a deep, ominous hum reverberating through its core. Kira still gripped his wrist, her violet eyes scanning the dim corridor as if expecting an enemy to materialize from the walls. "We need to move," Kira urged, releasing his arm. "If they find us here, we won't survive." David felt a knot tighten in his chest. "Who exactly are they?" Kira shot him a glance but didn't answer directly. "Trust me, you don't want to meet them." Without waiting for a response, she took off down the corridor with a fluid grace that seemed effortless despite her recent stasis. David stumbled after her, his boots clanging against the metal floor. But Kira moved with a silent precision. "Do you even know where you're going?" he called, trying to keep up. Kira glanced back over her shoulder. "Not exactly, but anywhere is safer than staying here." David suppressed a groan. He didn't sign up for this. Alien ships, mysterious enemies, cryptic companions. Yet here he was, running through the bowels of a forgotten spacecraft with a strange alien girl who barely remembered her own name. Just another day in the void. Suddenly, the corridor ahead of them lit up, a series of symbols glowing brighter along the walls. Kira froze in place. "That's not good," she muttered. David caught up, panting. "What now?" Kira's lips thinned into a grim line. "The ship is awake." Before David could ask what she meant, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a passage leading down into darkness. Kira grabbed David's arm and yanked him inside just as the corridor behind them erupted with strange, metallic noises, like claws scraping against the hull. "What the hell is that?" David whispered as they crouched in the narrow space. Kira pressed a finger to her lips. "Hunters, automated sentinels. They protect the ship and kill anything they find." David's blood ran cold. "Great, you woke me up into a death trap." "Technically, you woke me up," Kira shot back with a wry smirk. Despite the danger, there was something oddly reassuring in her sarcasm, like she was used to surviving impossible odds. They crawled through the cramped passage until it opened into a larger chamber. Strange devices hummed along the walls, glowing softly in the dimness. David spotted what looked like an ancient control panel at the center of the room. Kira moved toward it with purpose. "If I can override the ship's systems, I might be able to buy us some time." David watched as her slender fingers flew over the alien interface, symbols rearranging themselves beneath her touch. It was mesmerizing and mildly terrifying. How quickly she adapted to technology that should have been entirely foreign. "How do you know how to do that?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "I don't," Kira admitted, not looking up from the console, "but it feels familiar." David shook his head, muttering, "Great. An alien with amnesia and instincts. That's exactly what I needed today." Kira ignored his comment, her focus unbroken. After a few tense moments, the symbols on the console pulsed, and the humming noise shifted. The walls around them flickered as the alien ship responded to Kira's commands. "There," she whispered triumphantly. "That should block the sentinels from tracking us, temporarily." David let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Okay, so, what now?" Before Kira could answer, the floor beneath them trembled violently. David stumbled, but caught himself against the wall. Kira's face twisted with fear. "They're here," she whispered. "They've boarded the ship." David's heart dropped. "Who?" Kira grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a nearby hatch. "We need to find a way off this ship. Fast." They sprinted through the maze-like corridors, the sound of metallic footsteps growing louder behind them. David could feel the tension in Kira's grip. Whoever these hunters were, she was genuinely terrified of them. The alien vessel groaned under its own weight as though warning them of impending doom. They rounded a corner and skidded to a stop in front of a massive observation window. Beyond the glass, David saw the vast emptiness of space, and something far more terrifying. A sleek predatory ship was docking with the alien vessel. Its hull shimmered like liquid metal, and its design was both elegant and sinister, built for speed and destruction. David's stomach twisted. "Tell me that's not the hunters," he muttered. "That's them," Kira confirmed grimly. "And they won't stop until they have what they came for." David looked at her, dread sinking in. What exactly did they come for? Kira hesitated. "Me." David's mind reeled at Kira's revelation. "They're after you." Kira nodded grimly, pulling him away from the observation window. "They're not going to stop until they find me. We need to move." "But why?" David demanded as they sprinted down another twisting corridor. "What do they want with you?" "I wish I knew," Kira said through gritted teeth. "I just know I woke up on this ship alone, and I've been running from them ever since." David groaned. "Fantastic. A galactic game of hide and seek, and I'm stuck in the middle." They reached a junction where 3 corridors branched in different directions. Kira hesitated for only a second before yanking David down the leftmost one. The walls trembled as a mechanical thud echoed behind them, evidence that the hunters had boarded the ship. "We're running out of time," Kira snapped. "There should be an emergency pod on this side of the ship." David's lungs burned, but he pushed himself harder, trusting her instincts. "Please tell me you're sure about that." "I'm not," Kira admitted, "but it's our only chance." They rounded another corner, and Kira skidded to a halt so abruptly that David nearly collided with her. A massive doorway loomed ahead, sealed shut with glowing symbols etched across its surface. Kira rushed to the control panel, her fingers a blur over the alien interface. David cast a nervous glance over his shoulder. The heavy clanks of the hunter's footsteps were growing louder. "Any day now." "Almost there," Kira muttered. The symbols on the door flickered and rearranged. With a heavy groan, the door slid open, revealing a narrow chamber lined with sleek escape pods. David exhaled in relief. Finally, some luck. They bolted toward the nearest pod. Kira clambered inside, her silver hair catching the dim light. David squeezed in after her, the pod's cramped interior forcing them into awkward proximity. "Strap in," Kira ordered, flicking switches on the control panel. "This ride's going to be rough." David strapped himself in, his heart pounding. Define rough. The escape pod hummed to life, and the door hissed shut behind them. Kira yanked on a lever, and the pod shuddered violently as it detached from the alien vessel. David's stomach lurched as they were launched into space, the stars blurring outside the window. For a brief, blissful moment, there was silence. David allowed himself to believe they were safe. Then the sensors lit up in warning. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," David groaned. Kira's expression darkened as she scanned the readout. "They're following us." David twisted in his seat, peering out the small rear window. His heart sank as he spotted the hunter's ship, sleek and relentless, closing the gap between them. "They're faster than us," Kira muttered. "We won't outrun them." "Then what's the plan?" David asked, panic creeping into his voice. Kira hesitated, her violet eyes scanning the pod's controls. "We'll have to outsmart them." David's brow furrowed. "How exactly do you outsmart a ship built for hunting?" Slow smiles spread across Kira's face. "We give them something they don't expect." Without further explanation, Kira slammed a fist down on a control panel. Alarms blared inside the pod, and David's seat vibrated as the thrusters fired in erratic bursts. "What are you doing?" David shouted. Kira grinned, her eyes glinting with mischief. "We're going to make them think we've lost control." David's stomach dropped as the pod spiraled wildly through space. The stars outside twisted into dizzying streaks, and the hunter ship veered sharply to avoid colliding with them. "This is insane," David yelled, clinging to his seat. "That's the idea," Kira shot back, adjusting their trajectory with deft precision. "They won't expect an out-of-control ship to escape." The pod hurtled toward a nearby asteroid field, the jagged rocks spinning slowly in the void. David's eyes widened. "Please tell me you're not flying us into that." "Buckle up," Kira said, her grin widening. "We're threading the needle." The escape pod dove into the asteroid field, weaving through the floating rocks with terrifying speed. David clung to the armrests, teeth clenched as they narrowly dodged chunks of debris. Behind them, the hunter's ship followed, its sleek frame slicing through the asteroids with ease. But as Kira twisted the pod through tighter and tighter gaps, the hunters struggled to keep up. "They're still on us," David shouted over the roar of the engines. "Not for long," Kira muttered. Her hands moved like lightning over the controls, and she spun the pod in a dizzying spiral. David's heart raced as they squeezed through a narrow gap between two enormous asteroids. The hunter ship followed, but too late. With a deafening crunch, the hunter's ship scraped against the rocks, its sleek hull tearing open. The vessel shuddered violently, sparks flying from its engines. "They're hit," David whooped, his relief bubbling over into laughter. "We did it." Kira didn't respond. Her focus remained sharp as she guided the pod through the rest of the asteroid field. Only when they emerged on the other side did she finally relax, slumping back in her seat. David let out a shaky breath. "Okay, that was officially the craziest thing I've ever done." Kira smirked. "Welcome to my life." For a moment, they floated in the calm silence of space, their pursuers left behind. David glanced over at Kira, a question lingering on his lips. "So, now what?" Kira's smile faded, replaced by a distant sadness. "Now, we figure out where the hell we are." The escape pod drifted silently through the endless void. The stars beyond the glass flickered like distant promises. But David and Kira both knew those promises came with no guarantees. After what felt like an eternity, David finally spoke, breaking the heavy silence. "So, do you actually know where we are, or are we just winging it?" Kira gave a tired sigh, her fingers tapping lightly on the pod's malfunctioning console. "I have a rough idea. The ship I woke up on, it wasn't traveling aimlessly. It was heading toward something." David frowned, leaning forward. "Something like what?" Kira glanced sideways at him, her violet eyes thoughtful. "I think it was following a signal. Something ancient, something powerful." David threw his hands up. "Of course, alien treasure hunts, secret signals. Why not? The universe has really outdone itself this time." Kira allowed herself a small smile. "It's not all bad. You got to meet me, didn't you?" David snorted. "I'm not sure if that's a blessing or a curse yet." Kira rolled her eyes but didn't argue. Instead, she turned her attention back to the dim console. After a few moments of fiddling, she managed to get a faint readout. "There." She pointed to a distant point on the map. "A system at the edge of the known galaxy. We head there. That's where the signal is strongest." David leaned closer, squinting at the display. "What's waiting for us there?" Kira hesitated. "I don't know, but if the hunters are after me, it might hold the answers I need. Maybe the answers we both need." David's stomach twisted. "You mean answers about why you were in that pod, and why I just got dragged into all of this?" "Exactly," Kira whispered. David rubbed his face, exhaustion creeping over him. "Okay, let's say we make it to this signal. What if it's just another trap? What if we're walking straight into something worse?" Kira's expression softened. "Then we deal with it, together." There was something oddly reassuring about the way she said it, and David found himself nodding despite the gnawing uncertainty in his gut. He leaned back in his seat, staring out at the drifting stars. "Well, I've come this far. No sense quitting now." Just as a hint of calm began to settle over them, the pod's sensors crackled to life with a sudden, urgent ping. Both David and Kira leaned forward at once, their faces illuminated by the flickering display. "What now?" David muttered. Kira's brow furrowed as she analyzed the readout. "There's something ahead. A structure." David's heart skipped a beat. "Another ship?" "No." Kira shook her head slowly, her voice tinged with awe. "It's a station, and it's enormous." David squinted at the screen. The station ahead was unlike anything he'd ever seen. It hung in space like a colossal, ancient spiderweb, its spires and towers glowing faintly with the same blue symbols that had covered the alien ship they escaped from. "That's where the signal's coming from," Kira whispered, her voice barely audible. David stared at the eerie station, unease prickling along his spine. "And let me guess, we're going to dock there, aren't we?" Kira shot him a mischievous smile. "Got a better idea?" David groaned. "No, but for the record, I hate this plan." With a flick of her wrist, Kira adjusted the pod's course. As the station loomed closer, the sense of dread deepened, wrapping around David like a cold mist. But alongside the fear, there was a spark of excitement. A strange sense that whatever lay inside that ancient structure was worth the risk. The escape pod shuddered as it latched onto the docking port of the station. A series of mechanical clicks echoed through the chamber, and the airlock hissed open. David's heart pounded as he glanced at Kira. "You ready for this?" Kira flashed a grin that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Not even a little, but let's go." Together, they stepped through the airlock and into the unknown. The atmosphere inside the station was heavy with age, the scent of metal and ancient dust clinging to the stale air. David's boots clanked softly against the cold floor, the sound swallowed by the endless, cavernous corridors. Every step felt like a journey deeper into the unknown, with no guarantee of a way back. Kira moved beside him with quiet grace, her gaze flitting from one glowing symbol to the next. The walls of the station pulsed faintly, as if the entire structure were alive, watching, waiting. "This place feels wrong," David muttered under his breath. Kira nodded but said nothing, her expression tense. The station was unlike anything she had encountered before, and yet something about it stirred a deep, unsettling familiarity in her mind. It was as though fragments of forgotten memories were floating just out of reach, teasing her with half-formed images and echoes of a past she couldn't quite grasp. "Where exactly are we going?" David asked after a long stretch of silence. "There's a core," Kira said softly, her voice distant. "Somewhere near the center of the station. It's where the signal is strongest." David cast her a wary glance. "And what do you think we'll find there?" Kira shrugged, her silver hair catching the dim light. "Answers, I hope." They continued deeper into the station, passing rooms filled with strange machinery, ancient devices humming softly, their purposes lost to time. Some chambers held skeletal remains of beings that weren't human. Their alien forms lay twisted and forgotten, their lifeless gazes fixed on nothing. David shivered, trying not to dwell on how long this place had been abandoned, or what had killed its former occupants. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" David whispered. Kira shot him a glance over her shoulder. "Do you have a better one?" David opened his mouth to reply, but a sudden, distant sound froze the words on his tongue. Metallic scrape, faint, but unmistakable. Kira stiffened. "They're here." David's blood ran cold. "The hunters." Kira nodded grimly, her violet eyes scanning the shadows. "They must have tracked us through the asteroid field. They won't stop now." "Great," David muttered, gripping the handle of his tool belt like it was a weapon. "So, what do we do?" Kira's expression hardened. "We get to the core. If I'm right, there might be a way to shut the hunters down, or at least slow them down." David shook his head in disbelief. "You really think an ancient alien station is going to save us?" Kira gave him a small, weary smile. "I think it's our only shot." They quickened their pace, the eerie glow of the station's walls guiding them toward the central chamber. The distant sounds of pursuit grew louder, metallic footsteps echoing through the corridors, coming closer with every passing second. Finally, they reached a massive door marked with intricate, glowing symbols. Kira placed her hand on the panel, and the symbols rearranged themselves beneath her touch. The door groaned open, revealing a vast chamber bathed in a soft, ethereal light. At the center of the room was an enormous console, its surface covered in swirling patterns and alien glyphs. The air around it buzzed with energy, and David could feel the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. Kira approached the console slowly, her hand hovering over the glowing interface. "This is it," she whispered. "The core." David glanced nervously at the entrance. "Whatever you're going to do, do it fast." Kira placed her hand on the console, and the glyphs began to shift and pulse beneath her touch. The entire chamber hummed with power as the station seemed to awaken around them. David felt the floor vibrate beneath his feet, and the walls glowed brighter, casting long shadows that danced across the room. Kira's face twisted in concentration as she worked the controls, her fingers moving with a strange, instinctual familiarity. The console responded to her touch as if it had been waiting for her all along, and David couldn't shake the feeling that Kira was somehow connected to this place in ways she didn't fully understand. Suddenly, the door to the chamber slammed shut, sealing them inside. David's heart skipped a beat. Was that supposed to happen? Kira didn't answer. Her focus remained locked on the console, her hands moving faster as the glyphs shifted and rearranged beneath her fingers. The hum of the station grew louder, and the air crackled with electricity. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, the entire chamber lit up in a brilliant flash of blue light. David shielded his eyes as the room pulsed with power, the ancient machinery roaring to life around them. When the light faded, Kira stepped back from the console, her expression unreadable. What did you do?" David asked, his voice shaky. Kira exhaled slowly. "Activated the station's defenses. The hunters won't be able to follow us now." David let out a breath of relief, but Kira's expression remained troubled. "There's more," she said quietly. "The station, it's not just a place, it's a weapon." David blinked, stunned. "A weapon? Against what?" Kira's gaze darkened. "Against something far worse than the hunters." David's mind reeled at Kira's words. "Worse than the hunters?" Kira nodded, her expression grim. "This station was built as a last defense. Whatever it's meant to stop, it's still out there." She stared at the glowing console, as if searching for some hidden truth. "And I think it knows we're here." David's stomach twisted. "What do you mean, it knows?" Kira tapped a sequence on the console, causing the glyphs to pulse and rearrange. "The hunters weren't just chasing me. They're pawns in something much bigger. This station is a beacon, and by activating it, I might have drawn its attention." David let out a shaky breath, glancing toward the sealed door. "So, what exactly did we wake up?" Kira's violet eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, David saw fear flicker in their depths. Something ancient, something powerful enough to wipe out entire civilizations. David ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of it all. "Fantastic. So not only are we stuck in a creepy alien station, but we also just rang the dinner bell for a cosmic monster." Kira gave him a wry smile. "More or less." David groaned. "You've got to work on your sense of optimism. You know that." Before Kira could respond, the station trembled violently. Lights flickered, and the hum of the ancient machinery grew louder, more urgent. "They're getting closer," Kira said, her voice tense. "We need to find the control core. If we can activate the station's full defenses, it might give us a chance to fight back." David threw his hands up in exasperation. "Right, because fighting back against an ancient world-destroying entity sounds like a great plan." Kira grinned despite the danger. "You've got a better one." David sighed, shaking his head. "Not even a little." The two of them sprinted through the chamber, following a winding staircase that led deeper into the heart of the station. As they descended, the walls pulsed with light, the glyphs shifting like they were alive, reacting to their presence. They reached a vast, circular room at the base of the station. In the center of the room stood a massive crystalline structure, suspended in midair by beams of shimmering energy. The crystal pulsed with a soft blue glow, casting eerie patterns across the walls. "This is it," Kira whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The control core." David stared at the massive crystal, a sense of both wonder and dread settling over him. "So, what now?" Kira stepped toward the core, her hand hovering just above the glowing surface. "We activate it. If the station recognizes me as an ally, it might give us access to its full power." "And if it doesn't?" David asked, his voice tight. Kira smiled faintly. "Then we're probably dead." David closed his eyes, muttering under his breath. "Great. I love these odds." Kira's hand pressed against the crystal, and the room filled with a brilliant light. The glyphs along the walls rearranged themselves in intricate patterns, and the hum of the station's machinery rose to a deafening crescendo. For a moment, everything was still. Then the crystal pulsed once, twice, and a strange voice echoed through the room, soft but commanding. Scifi. Kira's eyes widened in shock. It's sentient. David took a cautious step back. Okay, this just got a whole lot weirder. The voice repeated, louder this time. Identifi. Kira swallowed hard, stepping closer to the crystal. I am Kira. Woke up aboard your vessel. I seek guidance. The crystal pulsed in response, and the glyphs along the walls shifted into a new configuration, one that David instinctively recognized as coordinates. Kira's breath hitched. It's showing us where to go. David squinted at the glowing symbols. That's a planet. Out there. Kira nodded slowly. It's more than that. It's where the hunters came from. And if we want to stop them, and whatever they're working for, that's where we have to go. David stared at the coordinates, a knot of dread tightening in his gut. You realize this is insane, right? We're heading straight into the belly of the beast. Kira met his gaze, her expression resolute. We don't have a choice. Before David could respond, the station shuddered violently. Alarms blared, and the walls pulsed with angry red light. They're here, Kira whispered. David's heart pounded in his chest. Looks like our window just closed. What now? Kira's gaze hardened. We fight our way out. And then she glanced at the glowing coordinates, determination burning in her violet eyes. We finish this. The station groaned under the strain as the hunters forced their way inside, their metallic footsteps reverberating through the walls. David and Kira shared a quick glance. There was no time left. Whatever unfinished business the station held would have to wait. Now it was about survival. Back to the escape pod, David asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be that easy. Kira shook her head. The station's defenses bought us a little time, but not enough to outrun them. We need to fight our way through. David gripped his tool belt. Fight? With what? I've got a wrench and you've got attitude. Kira smirked despite the gravity of the situation. Don't underestimate attitude. She turned back to the control core, pressing a final sequence of symbols. The crystal pulsed brightly, and a compartment slid open, revealing a sleek alien device. A weapon humming with raw energy. Now that's more like it, David muttered, grabbing the weapon. It adjusted in his hands, reshaping to fit his grip perfectly. Kira activated a secondary console embedded in the wall. I've rigged the station to self-destruct, she said without looking back. If they want me so badly, they'll have to go down with it. David blinked. You what? Kira gave him a grim smile. We either end this here, or they keep coming. Forever. Before David could argue, the door to the chamber burst open. The hunters swarmed in. Tall, sleek machines, their bodies shimmering like liquid metal. Their cold, glowing eyes locked onto Kira, and without hesitation, they advanced. David raised the alien weapon and fired. The bolt of energy erupted from the barrel, striking the lead hunter. The creature convulsed, its metallic form glitching and collapsing to the ground. Not bad, David muttered, reloading instinctively as more hunters closed in. Kira moved like a whirlwind, her body a blur as she darted through the attackers. She grabbed a fallen hunter's weapon mid-spin and fired it into the crowd, clearing a path toward the exit. Move, Kira shouted over the chaos. David followed close behind, firing wildly as they sprinted through the twisting corridors of the station. The walls flickered with red warning lights, and the floor trembled beneath their feet. We won't make it to the pod, David yelled. What's the backup plan? Kira didn't hesitate. We take one of their ships. David groaned but kept running. Of course we do. They emerged into the hangar bay just as another wave of hunters poured in from the opposite end. The sleek, predatory hunter ship sat waiting, engines already humming with life. Cover me, Kira shouted, dashing toward the ship's open hatch. David planted himself behind a stack of cargo crates, firing shot after shot to hold the hunters at bay. "You better know how to fly that thing." Kira's voice echoed from inside the ship. "How hard can it be?" David gritted his teeth as the hunters closed in. Just as his weapon overheated, the hunter ship roared to life, its engines flaring. "Get in now!" Kira's voice boomed over the ship's comms. David didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted for the hatch, diving inside just as the hunters unleashed a volley of energy blasts. The ship's hatch slammed shut behind him, and the engines roared as Kira piloted the craft out of the station. The moment they cleared the hangar, the alien station behind them erupted in a brilliant explosion. The shockwave propelled their ship forward, sending David sprawling onto the floor of the cabin. Kira glanced back from the pilot's seat, her eyes gleaming with adrenaline. "Told you we'd make it." David groaned, pulling himself upright. Barely. He staggered to the co-pilot's seat, watching the remnants of the station drift into the void. "So, now what?" Kira inputted the coordinates glowing in her mind. "The final destination. Now, we finish it." The hunter ship glided silently through the dark expanse, moving with predatory grace toward the planet the station had pointed them to. David stared out at the looming world. Barren, alien landscape scared by ancient battles. "This is it," Kira whispered, her voice heavy with both hope and fear. The ship touched down on the surface, its landing smooth and silent. David and Kira stepped out into the dust-choked air, their gazes fixed on a massive crumbling structure ahead. An ancient citadel, older than any civilization either of them had ever known. "This is where it ends," Kira murmured. David glanced at her. "What do we do when we get inside?" Kira met his gaze, her violet eyes glinting. "We find out what they're afraid of, and we use it." Inside the citadel, the air was thick with ancient power. Glyphs along the walls pulsed with the same blue energy that had guided them across the stars. At the center of the chamber lay a massive dormant machine, a weapon designed not for war, but for transformation. "It's a failsafe," Kira whispered in awe. "It can shut down every hunter across the galaxy." "But," David's brow furrowed. "But what?" Kira's gaze darkened. "It requires a living mind to activate it. Someone has to link with the machine, and they might not survive." David stared at the device, his heart pounding. "So, one of us stays behind?" Kira nodded. "It's the only way." David clenched his fists, his mind racing. "You've been running your whole life. You don't have to do this." Kira smiled softly. "It's not about running anymore. It's about finishing what they started." Before David could stop her, Kira stepped toward the machine. The glyphs along its surface glowed brighter, responding to her presence. "Kira, wait." She turned to him, her smile both sad and resolute. "You showed me that it's okay to stop running. Now it's my turn to make sure you have a future to run toward." The machine roared to life as Kira placed her hand on its core. Energy surged through the chamber, and the glyphs flared with brilliant light. "Kira," David shouted, but it was too late. The machine enveloped her in a blinding pulse of energy. The light faded, leaving only silence. The glyphs dimmed, and the ancient weapon fell still. David dropped to his knees, his heart aching. "Kira." Then, slowly, the glyphs flickered back to life, soft and steady. And from the machine's core, a familiar voice echoed, "David, I'm still here." David's breath hitched. "Kira." Her voice was faint but alive. "I'm part of the system now. The hunters are gone. It's over." David smiled through his tears. "You did it." The chamber around him pulsed gently, as if in agreement. "And so did you," Kira whispered. David stood, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. "What now?" Kira's voice held a hint of mischief. "Now, you go explore the stars, and don't forget me." David chuckled, wiping his face. Not a chance. He turned toward the exit, the universe stretching out before him. The hunt was over, but his adventure was just beginning.